It was September 22, 2007, and Tom Garrison was alone on his small lobster boat just off the coast of Maine. The morning had been routine so far, like many before. Tom had been a lobsterman for over 20 years, making a living pulling in traps from the cold waters of the North Atlantic. He knew the waters well, every hidden rock and stretch of coastline familiar to him. The traps were full today, and the catch was promising. So Tom worked efficiently, hoisting the cages from the depths, checking for lobsters, and resetting the traps. The sky was overcast, a typical day for Maine, but the waters were calm enough for a smooth haul. Tom felt comfortable and secure in his routine, paying little attention to the surroundings as he focused on his work. He hummed as he pulled up another cage, heavy with struggling lobsters. He leaned over the edge of his boat to untangle the trap when the ship rocked unexpectedly. At first, Tom thought it was just a strong wave, but then the ship jolted harder this time, nearly knocking him off balance. Puzzled, Tom looked out over the side, and that's when he saw the dark shape circling the boat. It was a bull shark, much larger than any fish he had encountered in these waters. Bull sharks weren't common here, but with warming waters and shifting marine life patterns, they had started showing up more often in New England waters. Bull sharks were aggressive and known for their unpredictable behavior, and this one seemed drawn to the struggling lobsters. Before Tom could react, the shark rammed the side of the boat with alarming force. The ship lurched violently, and Tom scrambled to keep his footing. His heart began to race as the reality of the situation hit him. The shark wasn't just investigating the boat, it was attacking it. Tom had heard stories of sharks becoming aggressive around fishing boats, but he never imagined it would happen to him. Another hit from the shark sent Tom sprawling onto the deck, and before he could get back on his feet, the boat tipped sharply to one side. Suddenly, Tom lost his grip and was thrown overboard, crashing into the icy water below. He surfaced quickly, gasping for air, the cold taking his breath away as the realization of his situation sank in. The bull shark was still circling, drawn by the commotion and the scent of the lobsters in the water. Tom knew he was in immediate danger. Now, rocking without control, the boat drifted away from him, and the shark was closing in. Tom's survival instincts kicked in, and he tried to stay calm, but he could feel the raw fear rising inside him as the predator moved closer. He glanced around, looking for anything that could help. His boat was too far to reach quickly, and the shore was distant, a faint outline through the misty air. The bull shark passed underneath him, its massive shadow sending a jolt of panic through his body. Tom knew that bull sharks were not only fast but also extremely territorial. He had to act fast. Tom kicked his legs, trying to stay afloat, but every movement drew the shark's attention. The water churned as the shark turned sharply, its dorsal fin cutting through the surface as it returned toward him. Tom knew he couldn't outswim it. His only chance was to outmaneuver it. He had spent his life on these waters, and knew erratic movements could distract sharks. He thrashed his arms in the water, creating as much turbulence as possible, hoping to confuse the predator long enough to buy himself some time. The shark circled him closer this time. Tom felt the displacement of water as it swam just beneath him, its powerful body sending waves that rocked him. Then, without warning, the shark lunged. Tom twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the open jaws, but the shark grazed his side, leaving a deep scratch on his leg. The pain shot through him, but there was no time to think about it. He kicked hard, swimming for the boat. The shark wasn't done. It came at him again, this time from below, and Tom felt the force of its body as it rammed into him, pushing him back under the water. He struggled to resurface, his lungs burning as he fought to stay above the surface. The boat drifted farther away, but Tom couldn't focus on that. He had to keep the shark at bay. In desperation, Tom reached out for anything to defend himself. His hands found a piece of debris floating nearby, a wooden plank from his boat. As the shark made another pass, he swung the plank with all his strength, striking the shark on the nose. The shark recoiled, momentarily stunned, but it was far from retreating. Tom knew he had only seconds before it attacked again. Summoning the last of his strength, Tom began swimming toward the boat, the plank still clutched in his hand. The cold water sapped his energy, but he pushed on, knowing it was his only chance. Behind him, the shark circled again, but its movements had slowed, the blow to its nose having thrown it off for the moment. Tom finally reached the side of his boat and hauled himself aboard with every ounce of strength he had left. He collapsed onto the deck, gasping for air, his body shaking from the cold and the adrenaline. The shark passed by the boat, its dark shape visible beneath the surface, before slowly disappearing into the depths. Tom lay on the deck, his leg bleeding and his body exhausted, but he was alive. The bull shark had come terrifyingly close, but he had outlasted it. As he lay there, catching his breath, he realized how close he had come to becoming another story in the news. A reminder that danger could appear without warning, even in the waters he had known his whole life. Waters off the coast of South Australia are home to some of the world's most giant great white sharks. These apex predators, known for their incredible speed and powerful jaws, have made this area famous among divers. People around the globe visit Port Lincoln to experience cage diving, a chance to get up close with these majestic but fearsome creatures. On October 19, 2024, two seasoned divers, Emma Callahan and Sarah Briggs, arrived at the marina, ready for what they hoped would be the adventure of a lifetime. Emma and Sarah, both in their early 30s, had been friends since college and shared a love for the ocean. They'd been diving together for years, exploring coral reefs and deep-sea caves. This was their first time cage diving with great whites. That morning, they joined a small group on a boat operated by South Coast Expeditions, a well-known company specializing in shark tours. The day was calm, and the crew chatted with the divers about safety measures and the unique behaviors of great whites. Great white sharks are drawn to these waters by abundant seals and fish. The crew explained that the sharks' heightened senses, especially their ability to detect vibrations, often make them curious about human activity. Though cage diving is considered safe, everyone must respect the animals and avoid sudden movements that could draw too much attention. By mid-morning, the boat anchored near Neptune Islands, a hotspot for shark sightings. The crew began baiting the water with chunks of fish known as chumming to attract sharks. Emma and Sarah, dressed in wetsuits, were pulling on their masks and tanks. They laughed nervously as they helped each other secure their gear. The first group of divers entered the water, descending into the cage suspended beside the boat. The women watched intently, waiting their turn. When it was their time, Emma and Sarah climbed down the narrow ladder into the cage, their fins splashing slightly as they settled inside. The cage was small, with metal bars separating them from the open water. The women held onto the bars, peering into the blue expanse, their breaths loud through the regulator. At first, everything was calm. A few smaller sharks swam by, their sleek bodies gliding effortlessly through the water. The women signaled to each other, excited by the close encounter. As time passed, more giant sharks began to appear. A massive great white, estimated to be about 15 feet long, swam closer to the cage. Its movements were slow and deliberate, its eyes black and unblinking. Emma tapped Sarah's shoulder, pointing toward the shark as it turned sharply, circling the cage. The creature's presence was electrifying but intimidating. Its sheer size made the cage feel smaller. The boat crew above observed, shouting updates to those in the cage. The shark's behavior shifted. It became more aggressive. It began bumping the cage with its snout, testing the structure. Emma and Sarah clutched the bars, their excitement turned to unease. The crew banged on the side of the boat, attempting to distract the shark, but it seemed fixated on the cage. Suddenly, the shark surged forward, its jaws snapping at the metal bars. The force of the attack sent vibrations through the cage. Emma tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The shark struck again, its teeth scraping against the metal. The women's breathing quickened as they realized the cage might not hold. Above water, the crew scrambled to pull the cage up, but the shark was relentless. In a horrifying moment, the shark's powerful jaws clamped onto one of the bars, bending it just enough to create an opening. Emma screamed as the shark lunged forward, grabbing her arm. The force yanked her through the gap, and the regulator ripped from her mouth. Sarah reached out, trying to hold on to her friend, but the shark thrashed violently, pulling Emma into open water. Sarah was frozen for a moment, her mind racing. Then she grabbed the cage bars, desperately trying to climb out. The shark returned before she could reach the ladder, slamming into the cage. The impact knocked Sarah off balance, and she fell back into the water. The cage swayed dangerously, the opening from the bent bar now wide enough for the shark to push through. The shark returned with terrifying speed. its jaws closing around Sarah's leg. She kicked wildly, her screams muffled by the regulator. The predator dragged her out of the cage, blood clouding the water as she disappeared into the depths. Emma was nowhere to be seen. Above, the crew shouted orders, frantically trying to reel the cage back to the boat. Another shark had appeared, drawn by the commotion. The water churned with activity, and the surface splattered with blood. The other divers on board watched in horror, unable to do anything but wait for the crew's next move. The boat crew launched a small rescue dinghy, hoping to locate the woman. They scanned the water, their radios crackling as they called for help. Minutes felt like hours as they circled the area. But there was no sign of Emma or Sarah. The only evidence of the attack was the damaged cage and the crimson stain in the water. By the time authorities arrived, it was clear there was little hope. The divers were gone, claimed by the ocean and its most fearsome predator. The crew was devastated, their faces pale as they recounted the events. Though cage diving was known for its safety record, this incident reminded everyone of the unpredictable nature of the wild. The tragedy left a lasting mark on the diving community. Emma Callahan and Sarah Briggs, experienced and careful divers, had trusted the cage to protect them. But the power of the great white shark, driven by instinct and strength, proved overwhelming. That day, the waters off South Australia became the site of a rare and brutal breach, a chilling reminder of the ocean's untamed power. On April 10, 2024, a team of marine biologists aboard the SeaQuest submarine set out on an exciting mission to explore the deep waters off the coast of California. They aimed to study a newly discovered shark species rumored to possess unique intelligence. The team comprised 4 professionals, each passionate about marine life and exploration. Dr. Rachel Hayes, the lead marine biologist, had over a decade of experience studying shark behavior. Known for her innovative methods, she sought to protect marine habitats by understanding these creatures. Dr. James Lee, a marine ecologist, focused on sharks' roles in aquatic ecosystems, while Mia Patel, an oceanographer, specialized in using technology to analyze ocean habitats. Lastly, Tom, an experienced submarine pilot, ensured the crew's safety and navigation of the submarine. The team marveled at the underwater beauty as the submarine descended into the ocean's depths. Brightly colored fish darted past, and corals swayed with the currents. After a few hours, they arrived at the designated research site, where signs of the new shark species had been detected. Excitement filled the team as they prepared to gather samples and collect data. Suddenly, an unexpected mechanical failure struck SeaQuest. Alarms blared and lights flickered. Tom quickly checked the systems, but it became clear they were stranded deep in the ocean. Panic began to spread as the team realized the gravity of the situation. They were surrounded by unknown and potentially dangerous marine creatures in the depths. The tension increased when they spotted a school of large sharks circling the submarine. These sharks were unlike any they had encountered before. Their movements were coordinated, and they appeared aggressively guarding their territory. Fear gripped the team as they realized they were dealing with a mechanical crisis and facing intelligent, dangerous predators. With limited oxygen and failing technology, the team knew they had to act quickly. Gathering around the control panel, they worked on a plan to escape. While James analyzed the data they had collected, Mia checked the emergency systems, hoping to send a distress signal. Rachel reminded the team to remain calm and work together. Their survival depended on combining their expertise and staying focused. As the crew worked to find solutions, the sharks outside continued to circle, their presence a constant reminder of the dangers lurking in the deep. What began as a mission to study a new species quickly turned into a fight for survival against the harsh realities of the ocean. Once filled with wonder, the underwater world had become a place of fear and urgency. With the sharks growing more aggressive and time running out, the crew had to find a way to escape before their situation worsened. They knew that every second counted as they raced against time. As the team aboard the SeaQuest submarine gathered their thoughts, they knew they had to act quickly. The sharks outside continued circling, and the constant sound of water against the hull only heightened their anxiety. Tom quickly assessed their remaining options, reminding the crew they still had some emergency tools and equipment. Mia examined the sonar and communication systems, hoping they could send a distress signal. While the main systems were down, she searched for any way to reach the surface for help. Meanwhile, Dr. Rachel Hayes closely observed the sharks through the small viewports. She noticed their aggressive and intelligent behavior, and realized the sharks were not acting randomly. They used the ocean's darkness to their advantage, working together, which both fascinated and terrified her. Mia suggested creating noise and vibrations to distract the sharks, theorizing it could give them a chance to escape. The crew agreed it was worth a try. They gathered materials and prepared a device typically used for research to emit sound waves in the water. As they activated the device, the sound echoed through the depths. The sharks paused, reacting to the noise. For a brief moment, the tension lifted as the sharks swam away from the submarine, drawn to the distraction. The team felt a surge of hope as they realized their plan might work, but they knew the diversion wouldn't last long. Rachel and James quickly took charge, preparing to navigate the submarine back toward the surface while the sharks were distracted. Tom carefully monitored the controls, guiding the vessel upward with precision. The team communicated constantly, staying focused as they ascended through the dark water. The sounds of the ocean surrounded them, and their survival weighed heavily on each of them. However, just as they started to gain momentum, the distraction device began to fail. Mia noticed the sound waves diminishing, and panic surged through the crew as the sharks sensed the change. They began to return, moving more aggressively toward the submarine. Time was running out, and the team realized their window of opportunity was closing fast. Rachel quickly adapted their plan. She suggested using the remaining emergency oxygen to create bubbles, hoping it would obscure the sharks' vision long enough for them to escape. It was a risky maneuver, but the crew had no other choice. Working together, they released bubbles into the water as they continued their ascent. As they neared the surface, the team felt renewed hope. The bubbles created a temporary barrier, confusing the sharks. The ocean's surface came closer with every passing moment, and the light of day began to break through the darkness. Finally, they breached the surface, and sunlight flooded the submarine. The crew erupted in relief, knowing they had escaped. Though their ordeal was over, they realized how fragile the balance between humanity and nature could be. Their experience had changed them, giving them a deeper respect for the creatures of the ocean. Rachel, determined to share their findings, knew this mission had uncovered valuable insights into marine life and sharks' intelligence. Their journey had just begun. On March 25, 2024, the seasoned crew aboard the fishing vessel Horizon's Edge embarked on another night patrol in the deep waters off the coast of Florida. The crew comprised experienced fishermen who had spent years working together. Captain Mike Dawson, a man in his 50s known for his deep knowledge of the sea and its mysteries, was at the helm. Mike's calm demeanor put his crew at ease, even during the toughest conditions. He had seen many things in his career, but always looked for the unexpected. The crew comprised Jake, the first mate in his 30s. He had a natural fishing talent, having worked on boats since his teens. Enthusiastic and sharp-eyed, he often spotted unusual things before others. Emily, the ship's biologist in her late 20s, was passionate about marine life and provided valuable insights into sea creatures. Tom, a reliable deckhand in his 40s, was known for his strength and always ensured the crew's safety during their shifts. On this particular night, the atmosphere was calm, with the moon shining brightly over the water. The crew was focused on their duties, preparing their gear for a routine catch. However, something unusual caught their attention as they moved further from shore. Using their night vision equipment, they noticed a large mass moving beneath the surface. Piqued by curiosity, they decided to approach cautiously. The crew was shocked to see a school of unnaturally large sharks swimming together as they got closer. Their size and how they moved in unison were unlike anything the crew had ever witnessed. It was as if the sharks were exhibiting coordinated behavior, which raised alarms in Emily's mind. She began to speculate about what could be causing this strange phenomenon. Tension hung in the air as the crew watched the sharks, their instincts warning them of potential danger. Suddenly, without warning, one of the sharks lunged out of the water and attacked one of the sailors leaning over the side of the boat. The crew erupted into chaos, shouting in horror as they rushed to help their colleague. The attack was swift and brutal, sending shockwaves of fear through everyone aboard the Horizon's Edge. Captain Mike barked orders for the crew to retreat to safety in the frenzy, but the panic was palpable. They quickly grabbed emergency equipment and desperately called for backup. The situation was unprecedented, and the crew realized they were facing something never documented in marine biology. The sheer size and aggression of the sharks indicated that they were not acting normally. With the vessel now in a state of emergency, the crew had to come together and devise a plan to protect themselves. Mike and Jake took charge, assessing the injuries and ensuring everyone was accounted for. Emily's scientific knowledge began to kick in as she tried to figure out why the sharks behaved this way. She wondered if something in the environment had triggered this unusual behavior. As the crew worked to stabilize the situation, they couldn't shake the fear of what they were dealing with. They were not just fishermen anymore. They were caught fighting for survival against an aggressive force of nature. The night that had started so calmly had turned into a nightmare, and the mystery of the sharks loomed large in their minds. The horizon's edge was now in uncharted waters, literally and metaphorically, and the crew knew they had to find a way to survive the night. The crew quickly gathered their wits to formulate a plan as the chaos continued on the horizon's edge. Captain Mike assessed the situation, realizing that they needed to move fast. The injured sailor was in shock, and they had to get him to safety. Jake and Tom worked together to pull the sailor away from the boat's edge, keeping him calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Emily used her training to check the sailor's injuries, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. She knew they had to act quickly to prevent further harm. The sight of the large, aggressive shark swimming close to the boat made her heart race, but she forced herself to stay focused. She recalled her studies about shark behavior and understood that something was wrong in the ocean. These sharks were not acting like normal predators. They were coordinated and appeared to be hunting as a group. With the injured sailor stabilized, Mike ordered the crew to raise the anchor and prepare to leave the area. They needed to get away from the sharks and find a safer spot. As the crew worked to maneuver the boat, the tension in the air was thick with fear. Every splash of water or sudden movement sent a jolt of anxiety through them. Just as they thought they might be able to escape, the sharks circled the boat again, showing no signs of retreat. Their large bodies moved in sync beneath the water, creating a sense of unease among the crew. It was as if the sharks knew of their presence and would not let them leave easily. The crew quickly realized they were facing an attack and a mysterious behavior that could threaten their survival. Mike steered the boat away from the area with the engine roaring to life, hoping to distance themselves from the aggressive school of sharks. However, the sharks followed closely, indicating they needed to be finished. Emily's mind raced as she wondered why these sharks acted this way. She knew that environmental changes could affect marine life, but what could have caused such a dramatic shift in behavior? Emily quickly jotted down her observations as they sped away, documenting everything she could about the sharks' actions. She understood that this incident could lead to significant discoveries about marine biology, but right now her main concern was the safety of her crew. After an eternity, the crew finally reached a quieter part of the water. The sharks seemed to lose interest, allowing the crew to sigh in relief. They quickly anchored the boat and assessed the damage. The injured sailors needed immediate medical attention, but they had managed to escape the jaws of danger. Once they were safe, the crew gathered to discuss what had just happened. They shared their thoughts on the sharks' unusual behavior and speculated about the reasons behind it. Emily suggested that water temperature or pollution changes might drive the sharks to act aggressively. The crew agreed they must report their findings to the local marine authorities. The aftermath of the encounter was not just about surviving the night. It was about understanding the implications of their experience. The crew had faced a terrifying ordeal that could have ended in tragedy, but they emerged with a newfound respect for the power of nature. They realized they needed to be more cautious and aware of their environmental impact. The crew members were determined to share their story as they returned to shore. They hoped that by raising awareness about the behavior of these sharks, they could contribute to protecting marine life and the safety of those who ventured out to sea. Monmouth County, New Jersey is a summer magnet for surfers and beachgoers. The waters of this part of the Atlantic coast are rich in fish and other marine life, making it a perfect hunting ground for predators like the great white shark. These massive sharks, sometimes growing over 15 feet long, are drawn to the area's murky shallows where seals and fish thrive. While shark sightings are common here, attacks are rare, but they are never out of the question. For surfers, the thrill of riding the waves often outweighs the risks. It was a warm morning in late summer 2024 when Ryan Whitaker, a seasoned surfer, arrived at a beach in Monmouth County. Ryan, in his mid-30s, had grown up surfing this coastline. He knew the waves here better than most, timing his sessions with the tides and swells. That morning, the waves were perfect, rolling and breaking cleanly, offering an ideal canvas for riders. Ryan parked his truck, waxed his board, and stretched on the sand. The beach was quiet except for a handful of early risers preparing to paddle out. On August 23, 2024, at around 7:30 a.m., Ryan had waded into the water, his board tucked under his arm. The ocean felt colder than usual, and the water was cloudier, stirred by the tide. He paddled beyond the breakers, scanning the horizon for the next wave. Surfing had always been a meditation for him, a moment of peace and focus. This morning felt no different. He spotted his friends, Nate and Jared, further out, their boards bobbing in the water as they waited for a set. Beneath the surface, the murky water hid a predator. Great whites often use the element of surprise when hunting. Their ability to sense movement and vibrations makes them masterful ambush hunters. In the last decade, shark activity along this stretch of coastline has increased, fueled by warmer waters and thriving prey populations. Signs posted at the beach reminded visitors to stay alert, but the warnings blended into the background for most surfers. Ryan caught his first wave of the day, carving across the face with practiced ease. As he paddled back out, he noticed the water seemed unusually still. The lull between sets often brought an eerie quiet, but today it felt heavier. A faint splash to his right caught his attention. He paused, his arms resting on his board, and glanced around. Nate and Jared were laughing, oblivious to anything unusual. Ryan shrugged off the feeling and paddled further, determined to catch the next big wave. Without warning, a massive force struck from below. The attack was swift and violent. A great white shark, estimated at over 13 feet, had risen from the depths, its jaws closing around Ryan's right leg. The pressure was overwhelming, like being crushed in a vice. Ryan screamed, the sound swallowed by the ocean as he thrashed wildly. His instincts took over and he began punching and kicking at the shark's snout, desperate to free himself. The shark's grip tightened, its teeth cutting deeper into his leg. Blood poured into the water, turning it red and thick around him. Ryan's mind raced as pain shot through his body. He knew he had to fight, or he wouldn't make it. He aimed another punch at the shark's eye, the only vulnerable spot he could think of. The shark released him momentarily, but the damage was done. His leg was shredded, the bite severing muscle, arteries, and bone. Ryan tried to paddle back toward the shore, but his strength was fading. Each movement sent waves of pain through his body. He looked down and saw the blood streaming from his leg, the water around him swirling crimson. His board drifted out of reach as he struggled to stay afloat. The shark circled back, drawn by the scent of blood. Its dorsal fin broke the surface, a chilling reminder that the attack wasn't over. Nate and Jared saw the commotion and started paddling toward Ryan, shouting and waving for help. A few onlookers noticed the splashing on the beach and ran to get the lifeguards. The shark lunged again, its massive body brushing against Ryan. He kicked weakly, his energy draining fast. Nate reached him first, grabbing his arm and pulling him onto his board. Jared joined seconds later, helping to steady Ryan as the three frantically paddled toward shore. The shark followed, its shadow visible beneath the water. Nate and Jared yelled and splashed, trying to deter it. The predator veered away but stayed close, its hunger not yet satisfied. Ryan's vision blurred as the blood loss took its toll. His friends paddled harder, shouting for help as they approached the shallows. Lifeguards waded into the surf, grabbing Ryan and hauling him onto the sand. His leg was a mangled mess, the wound gushing blood. The lifeguards worked quickly, tying a tourniquet above the bite to slow the bleeding. Ryan's face was pale, his breaths shallow. Paramedics arrived within minutes, loading him onto a stretcher and rushing him to the nearest hospital. The beach was chaotic, with surfers and beachgoers crowding around, shaken by what they had witnessed. Nate and Jared stood silently, their boards forgotten on the sand, their faces pale and tense. The shark was gone, disappearing back into the deep after the attack. In the ambulance, Ryan drifted in and out of consciousness. The paramedics worked tirelessly to stabilize him, but the damage was severe. By the time they reached the hospital, Ryan had lost a significant amount of blood. Doctors fought to save him, but the injuries proved too extensive. Hours later, news of his death spread, leaving the local surf community in shock. That day would be remembered as one of the most horrifying shark attacks in Monmouth County's history. Surfers who had once braved the waters without fear began to think twice. Great white sharks had always been a part of the ocean's ecosystem, but this attack reminded everyone of the risks of sharing the water with such mighty predators. For those who knew Ryan, the loss was devastating. A tragic end to a life spent chasing waves. The beaches near Cape Town, South Africa, are world-renowned for their beauty and surf-friendly waves. Muizenberg Beach, in particular, attracts surfers of all skill levels year-round. The area is also known for great white sharks, which thrive in these waters, drawn by the large population of seals. Despite the risks, surfers regularly take to the waves, knowing the thrill of surfing often comes with the reality of sharing the water with one of nature's most fearsome predators. On July 8, 2024, 26-year-old Tom Ward, an experienced surfer and local to Cape Town, arrived at Muizenberg Beach just after dawn. Tom had been surfing since he was a teenager, and the beach felt like his second home. The conditions were perfect that morning: clean waves and a light breeze. The sun was still low, casting long shadows on the sand. Tom parked his car, grabbed his well-worn board, and headed to the shoreline. He stretched for a few minutes, warming up his shoulders and legs. A few other surfers were already in the water, their boards bobbing on the surface. Tom walked into the surf, feeling the cool water rise around his ankles and knees. He lay flat on his board and paddled out, slicing through the gentle breakers. By 7:15 a.m., Tom was sitting beyond the breaking waves, scanning the horizon for the next set. He caught his first wave, carving across its face, his body moving in sync with the board. The adrenaline rush made him eager for more, and he paddled back out, positioning himself for another ride. The ocean felt calm, almost too quiet. As Tom waited, his legs dangled in the water, something surfers do instinctively. He wasn't thinking about what might be below him, but focused on the waves. Then, without warning, a powerful force struck him from below. The impact was so sudden and violent that it knocked him clean off his board. Tom plunged into the water, disoriented. He opened his eyes underwater, trying to figure out what had happened when he felt an intense, searing pain in his right thigh. A great white shark had attacked, its mighty jaws biting down and tearing into his flesh. The pain was unimaginable, sharp and all-encompassing, as the shark's teeth sank deep into his muscles. Tom screamed, his voice muffled by the water as he thrashed wildly in an attempt to break free. The shark pulled him downward, its powerful body twisting and dragging him through the water. Tom's mind raced. He knew he had to act quickly or he wouldn't survive. Summoning every ounce of strength, he kicked the shark with his free leg, striking it repeatedly near its snout. The shark's grip loosened slightly, and Tom twisted his body, forcing the predator to release him. He shot upward, desperate for air, his lungs burning as he reached the surface. Tom gasped for breath as his head broke through the water. He looked around frantically, spotting his surfboard floating a few feet away. Blood poured from the wound in his leg, clouding the water around him. He grabbed his board, using it as a flotation device, but the shark wasn't done. Its dorsal fin cut through the water like a blade, circling him. Tom's heart pounded as he clung to the board, trying to stay calm. The shark lunged again, hitting the board with its massive head. The impact sent Tom flying off, splashing back into the water. He scrambled back onto the board, using it as a shield. The shark circled closer, its movements deliberate and terrifying. Tom swung the board toward the shark's head, hitting it as hard as possible. The predator veered away but didn't leave. Other surfers in the lineup had noticed the attack and began paddling toward shore, shouting for help. A lifeguard stationed on the beach saw the commotion and sprang into action, blowing his whistle and radioing for backup. The lifeguard jumped onto a jet ski and sped toward Tom, creating a wake that momentarily distracted the shark. Tom's strength was fading. His leg was nearly useless, the muscles torn and bleeding profusely. Each second felt like an eternity as he struggled to stay afloat. The shark, sensing his weakness, moved in again. Just as it closed the distance, the jet ski roared between them. The lifeguard shouted and slapped the water with a paddle, trying to scare the predator away. The shark hesitated, then dove beneath the surface, disappearing momentarily. The lifeguard pulled alongside Tom, grabbing him and hoisting him onto the back of the jet ski. Tom collapsed, his body shaking uncontrollably from shock and blood loss. The lifeguard sped toward the shore, the engine's roar drowning out the sounds of the ocean. Behind them, the shark's dorsal fin resurfaced, trailing the jet ski for a few seconds before finally retreating into the deep. On the beach, paramedics were waiting with a stretcher. They lifted Tom off the jet ski and laid him down, working quickly to stop the bleeding. His wetsuit was shredded, and the wound on his thigh was deep, exposing muscle and bone. Blood soaked the sand beneath him as they applied a tourniquet, wrapping his leg tightly to slow the flow. Tom's face was pale, his breath shallow and uneven. The ambulance rushed Tom to the nearest hospital, sirens blaring. Meanwhile, beach officials closed Muizenberg Beach, posting warning signs and advising surfers to stay out of the water. The attack left a heavy sense of fear among the local surfing community. Shark attacks in Cape Town are not unheard of, but such a brutal and close encounter is rare. At the hospital, doctors worked urgently to save Tom's leg. His injuries were severe, with multiple lacerations and deep puncture wounds that had damaged tendons and blood vessels. Despite the extensive trauma, Tom was lucky to be alive. The quick actions of the lifeguard and paramedics had prevented the worst. The incident was a stark reminder of the risks surfers take when entering the ocean. Even in popular spots like Muizenberg Beach, where lifeguards and surfers are always present, the unpredictability of nature can turn a perfect day into a fight for survival. For Tom, the attack was a life-changing event, one he would never forget. July 19, 2009, 4 friends, Maria Teixeira, Pedro Santos, Inés Carvalho, and João Almeida, arrived in the Azores for what was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime. The archipelago, located off the coast of Portugal, is famous for its beautiful landscapes and pristine waters filled with marine life. After a few days of sightseeing, they decided to book a snorkeling tour to explore the ocean up close. They were excited, expecting to swim with fish and maybe catch a glimpse of dolphins. That morning, the group boarded a small boat with a local guide who assured them the waters were safe and calm. The ocean was inviting, the sky clear, and the friends could hardly wait to dive in. Their guide led them to a spot just off the coast of Fayal Island, a well-known location for snorkeling due to its crystal-clear water and vibrant coral. The guide briefly mentioned that sharks were sometimes seen in the area, but were usually harmless blue sharks, more curious than dangerous. Blue sharks are common in the waters surrounding the Azores. They are sleek, fast swimmers and generally considered non-aggressive towards humans. They feed mostly on squid and small fish. However, their curiosity can sometimes lead to closer encounters with snorkelers and divers, particularly when attracted by the movements and sounds of boats. This particular day, a blue shark had been circling near the area, drawn in by the disturbance of the boat's engine and the splashes from the group as they entered the water. The group donned their snorkeling gear and dove in, laughing and marveling at the colorful fish darting around them. Maria swam ahead, pointing out a school of fish to the others, while João floated nearby, taking in the beauty of the underwater world. Everything seemed perfect, and the experience was exactly what they had hoped for. But not far beneath them, the blue shark was watching. It approached slowly, curious about the sudden activity. At first, the shark maintained its distance, but as the group continued to swim and splash, it became bolder, moving closer with each pass. João was the first to notice the shadow below and gestured to the others, but they brushed it off, assuming it was just another fish. As they swam farther from the boat, the shark's behavior changed. It began to circle tighter, its sleek body moving more aggressively. Pedro, who had been enjoying the swim, felt anxious as he noticed the shark approaching. It wasn't just passing by, it was coming toward them. Panic set in when the blue shark made its first rapid approach. It darted straight toward Pedro, veering away at the last second, its tail brushing against his leg. The close encounter sent a wave of fear through the group as they realized they were no longer alone. Inés screamed into her snorkel, frantically trying to swim back toward the boat. "João, now seeing the shark's size and speed, grabbed Maria's arm, urging her to follow. The shark was circling faster now, its curiosity replaced by predatory instinct. It swam directly beneath the group, its dark shape clear in the water, and then shot upward toward Maria. She saw it too late. The shark's sharp snout struck her side, knocking her off balance as she struggled to regain control of the water. Pedro shouted for everyone to stay together, but the group was already scattered in the chaos, trying to swim for safety. The shark made another pass, this time targeting Joao. It swam close enough for him to feel the rush of water as it brushed past. His heart pounded as he kicked furiously, trying to reach the boat. But the ship, which had seemed so close just moments before, now felt impossibly far. The shark wasn't backing off, it was hunting, and the danger increased every second they stayed in the water. Inez, struggling to keep up with the others, saw the shark's dorsal fin cut through the surface. Her breaths came in short, panicked bursts as she tried to swim faster. But the shark was faster still. It circled back, coming up from below and ramming into Pedro, its teeth grazing his leg. Blood clouded the water around them as Pedro cried out in pain, his leg throbbing from the shark's bite. With Pedro injured and the shark growing more aggressive, the group had no choice but to fight back to the boat. Joao grabbed Maria and pulled her toward the ship, shouting for Pedro and Inez to follow as fast as possible. The shark was relentless, its sleek body cutting through the water as it made another pass, this time closer to Inez. She kicked hard, desperate to escape its reach. Pedro, bleeding and exhausted, struggled to keep swimming. His leg was slowing him down and he could feel the shark getting closer again. The pain from the bite was overwhelming, but he couldn't stop. In a desperate effort, Joao grabbed Pedro's arm and dragged him toward the boat. Sensing its prey slipping away, the shark lunged, its jaws snapping shut inches from Pedro's foot. With one last burst of energy, the group reached the boat. Finally realizing the danger, the guide pulled them aboard, their bodies trembling from the adrenaline and fear. As they collapsed onto the deck, gasping for breath, the blue shark circled the boat once more before disappearing into the deep, leaving only the memory of its attack behind. The dream vacation had turned into a nightmare, but they had survived. The shark's cold eyes and relentless pursuit would haunt them, but they knew they were lucky to have escaped. On March, Icebound Cove Park, located in Alaska, is a vast wilderness known for its icy fjords, towering glaciers, and abundant wildlife. It's one of the best places in the world to see orcas, the ocean's apex predators. These black and white giants, sometimes called killer whales, are known for their intelligence, speed, and complex social behavior. Pods of orcas roam the icy waters here, hunting seals, fish, and even larger prey like whales. In July 2024, marine biologist Lucas Hensley set out to kayak in these waters as part of his research on the park's ecosystem. It was supposed to be a peaceful day of observation and note-taking. That morning, July 15, 2024, Lucas loaded his kayak with gear. He had packed food, a waterproof notebook, and a dry bag containing emergency supplies. As a scientist studying marine life, Lucas had spent years in the field observing everything from humpback whales to sea lions. This trip was part of a larger project to document the behavior of orcas in Icebound Cove. The weather was calm, and the water mirrored the surrounding glaciers. It seemed like the perfect day for research. By 8 a.m., Lucas paddled away from the small boat that had dropped him off. He planned to spend several hours navigating the quieter inlets of the bay, where orcas were often spotted hunting for food. He was alone, but Lucas was used to solitude in the field. As he paddled, he scanned the water for movement, jotting notes whenever he saw seals sunbathing on ice floes or schools of fish swimming beneath the surface. A little after 10 a.m., Lucas noticed something unusual. In the distance, a pod of orcas surfaced, their dorsal fins slicing through the water. He stopped paddling and watched as they moved together, their movements synchronized. Orcas are highly social animals, often traveling in family groups called pods. This pod was hunting, their sharp movements hinting at a coordinated effort. Lucas kept a safe distance, observing them through his binoculars. But as he watched the pod, he failed to notice one orca that had split from the group. It moved silently, its dark body blending into the water. Lucas only realized something was wrong when he felt a sudden, powerful jolt. The kayak shook violently, nearly tipping over. He froze, looking down at the water. A massive orca had rammed the side of the kayak. Its sleek body rolled beneath him, and he saw the distinct white patches near its eyes. It wasn't playing. This was a direct strike. Before Lucas could react, the orca rammed the kayak again, this time harder. The kayak tipped over, sending him crashing into the icy water. The shock of the cold took his breath away. His arms flailed as he struggled to surface, his heavy clothing dragging him down. The kayak, now upside down, drifted a few feet away. Lucas trod water, gasping as his body adjusted to the freezing temperature. The orca circled him, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Lucas knew orcas rarely attack humans, but this one's behavior was different. It wasn't swimming away. It was curious, its massive body moving closer with each pass. Lucas kicked his legs to stay afloat, but the cold was sapping his strength. The orca disappeared beneath the surface and Lucas panicked. He turned in every direction, searching for the massive predator. Seconds later, it surfaced just a few feet away, spraying water from its blowhole. Lucas scrambled toward a nearby ice floe, using every ounce of strength he had left. The ice was slick and uneven, but he pulled himself halfway onto it. His hands burned from the cold as he gripped the edge, trying to steady himself. The orca didn't leave. It circled the ice floe, nudging it gently as if testing its stability. Lucas lay flat, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. He felt a sharp pain in his ribs where the kayak had struck him during the capsizing. His left leg throbbed from where it had slammed against the side of the kayak during the attack. Blood seeped through his wetsuit, and he realized he must have been cut during the struggle. The orca's head emerged from the water, its black eyes locked onto Lucas, its mouth partially open, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Lucas could hear the clicking sounds of its echolocation, a rapid series of clicks and whistles that orcas use to communicate and hunt. It was studying him, trying to understand what he was. Lucas stayed as still as possible, his heart pounding. He hoped the orca would lose interest, but it rammed the ice floe, nearly knocking him off. He grabbed onto a jagged piece of ice, his fingers numb from the cold. The orca dove again, disappearing into the deep. Lucas knew it could return at any moment. Minutes felt like hours as Lucas clung to the ice. His body was shaking uncontrollably, the cold creeping into his bones. He tried to focus on his breathing, keeping his movements slow to conserve energy. He looked around, hoping to spot a boat or another kayaker. But the bay was empty. He was alone with the orca. When the orca resurfaced, it was further away. It seemed to lose interest, swimming in wider circles before finally heading back toward the pod. Lucas watched as its dorsal fin disappeared into the distance. Relief washed over him, but he knew he wasn't safe yet. The cold was unbearable, and his injuries were severe. Lucas pulled himself entirely onto the ice floe using his strength. He fumbled for the emergency whistle in his jacket pocket, blowing it as loud as possible. The sound echoed across the bay. Minutes later, he heard the faint hum of a boat engine. A rescue crew spotted him, pulling him aboard and wrapping him in blankets. Lucas survived the attack, but his body was battered. His ribs were bruised, his leg was cut deeply, and his hands were swollen from frostbite. The encounter shook him, a rare and terrifying reminder of how unpredictable nature can be. The Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California are a hotspot for marine life. Known for their clear waters, rocky reefs, and kelp forests, they're home to seals, sea lions, and an array of fish species. Orcas, also called killer whales, occasionally visit these waters while following prey or traveling in pods. These animals are powerful and intelligent, often hunting with precision and speed. Though orcas rarely attack humans, their size and strength make them one of the ocean's most formidable predators. On September 9, 2024, Greg Harmon, a 38-year-old marine biologist, was on a diving expedition near San Miguel Island, one of the most remote in the Channel Islands chain. Greg had been studying local fish populations and kelp forest health for years. He loved the ocean and had spent countless hours diving in these waters. That morning, Greg and his dive team left the small harbor on their research boat, heading to a site known for its rich biodiversity. The team had planned a full day of diving, with Greg leading the first descent. By 8:30 a.m., the team reached the dive site. The water was calm as Greg suited up, checking his oxygen tank and securing his fins and mask. He was experienced and organized, always double-checking his gear. The team reviewed the dive plan, and Greg and two others soon entered the water. They descended slowly, the calm ocean surrounding them as they adjusted to the underwater world. Greg focused on his work, documenting fish species and examining the kelp. The underwater environment was alive with movement. Schools of small fish darted around while larger ones glided near the rocks. Greg moved further from the group to take samples, staying within sight of his dive partners. He felt at home underwater, the steady rhythm of his breathing in the regulator calming his mind. About 40 minutes into the dive, something unusual caught Greg's attention. In the distance, he saw large shapes moving toward them. At first, he thought it might be a group of dolphins, which often swam in the area. But as the shapes grew closer, Greg realized they were orcas. There were 3 of them, their distinct black and white bodies moving gracefully through the water. Greg stayed calm, watching them from a distance. Orcas were rare in this part of the Channel Islands, and he felt excitement and caution. He signaled to his team to stay alert as the orcas swam closer. The animals were massive, their dorsal fins towering above their sleek bodies. They moved in unison, circling slowly. Greg kept still, not wanting to provoke them. One orca broke away from the pod, swimming toward him. Its movements were deliberate, and Greg felt a sudden spike of fear. The orca circled him, its black eyes locked on him. Greg's instincts told him something wasn't right. He began to back away slowly, trying to distance himself and the animal more. Without warning, the orca lunged. Its powerful jaws clamped onto Greg's leg, the force knocking him backward. Pain shot through him as the orca's teeth tore into his wetsuit and flesh. The attack was quick but devastating, leaving Greg disoriented. His regulator slipped from his mouth and water rushed in as he struggled to breathe. The orca thrashed, pulling him through the water like a rag doll before releasing him. Greg's body went limp momentarily as he tried to process what had just happened. Blood clouded the water around him, and his vision blurred from the pain. He kicked weakly, trying to push himself away from the orca, but his leg was severely injured. The animal circled back, its massive body brushing against him. Greg's dive partners sprang into action. One swam toward him, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the orca. The other diver created a distraction, banging on a metal rod to draw the orca's attention. The tactic worked momentarily, giving Greg's rescuer enough time to drag him closer to the surface. The orca stayed. It followed them, its movement slower but still menacing. Greg struggled to stay conscious, his body racked with pain and cold. The ascent to the surface felt endless, every second filled with the fear that the orca would strike again. When they finally broke the surface, the boat crew spotted them immediately. The divers shouted for help, and the crew threw down a rescue line. Greg's strength was almost gone as the team hauled him onto the boat. Blood poured from his leg, staining the deck as the crew worked to stabilize him. They wrapped his leg tightly, trying to stop the bleeding, and radioed for emergency help. The orcas lingered near the boat, their dorsal fins cutting through the water. The crew watched nervously, unsure if the animals would attack again. One orca surfaced briefly, its head rising above the water as if to observe the commotion. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the orcas swam away, disappearing into the depths. Greg lay on the deck, shivering and barely conscious. His teammates stayed by his side, applying pressure to his wound and monitoring his breathing. The Coast Guard arrived about 20 minutes later, airlifting Greg to a hospital in Ventura. His injuries were severe, with deep lacerations and broken bones in his leg. Though the team's quick action saved his life, the attack shook everyone. Orca attacks on humans were exceedingly rare, and the encounter raised questions among researchers. What had caused the orca to act so aggressively? Was it a case of mistaken identity, or had something else triggered the attack? For Greg, the experience was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean and its most powerful predators. The vast expanse of the Arctic spread out in a white wilderness, a landscape so untouched and pristine that it seemed otherworldly. Here, on a remote island encased in ice and snow, Alex, a dedicated documentary filmmaker, had set up his base camp. His mission was to capture the elusive and intimate moments of a colony of seals during mating season. This endeavor promised rare and breathtaking footage. With his camera gear meticulously checked and survival equipment stowed away, Alex embarked on what he hoped would be a career-defining project. The seals were gathered on a vast stretch of frozen shoreline, their slick bodies contrasting sharply against the snow-covered ground. Few humans had ever witnessed this sight firsthand. The seals were busy with ritualistic displays and vocalizations, oblivious to the biting cold and howling winds that swept across the ice. Alex, bundled in layers of thermal gear, carefully navigated the treacherous terrain, his camera capturing the intricate dance of nature. Days passed in a blur of icy winds and breathtaking scenes. Alex became a silent observer, blending into the landscape, his presence barely noted by the seals. The camera's lens allowed him to see the world from a perspective few ever experienced, capturing the raw beauty and harsh realities of life in the Arctic. He documented the nurturing bond between mothers and their pups, the playful antics of younger seals, and the majestic yet brutal battles between males vying for dominance. One frigid morning, as the pale sun barely peeked over the horizon, Alex spotted a massive male seal that seemed to command the attention of the entire colony. This alpha male was an awe-inspiring figure with battle scars etched into his thick hide. Alex knew that getting footage of this dominant seal would be a highlight of his documentary. He approached cautiously, mindful of the animal's territorial nature. Sensing an unfamiliar presence, the alpha male lifted its head and locked eyes with Alex. The filmmaker's heart pounded as he continued to film, inching closer for a better shot. He knew the risks, but was driven by the promise of capturing something extraordinary. Suddenly the seal bellowed, a deep resonant sound that echoed across the ice. It was a warning, clear and unmistakable. Before Alex could react, the massive seal charged, its bulk moving slowly across the frozen ground. Alex's instinct for self-preservation kicked in. He swung his camera, hoping to deter the animal. The seal's attack was relentless, and the camera equipment offered little protection. Alex stumbled, falling hard onto the ice. Pain shot through his leg where the seal's powerful jaws had clamped down, tearing through his thick clothing. Desperation surged through him as he used his tripod to fend off the aggressive seal, each movement a struggle against the searing pain and rising panic. He knew he had to get away, to put distance between himself and the enraged animal. With great effort, he scrambled to his feet, using the tripod to keep the seal at bay as he backed away slowly. The alpha male eventually relented, returning to its territory, but the damage was done. Alex's leg throbbed with pain, the cold seeping into his bones through the torn fabric. The journey back to camp was an agonizing test of endurance and willpower. The extreme cold gnawed at him, sapping his strength and clarity. Though designed for the harsh conditions, his survival gear offered little solace against the pain radiating from his leg. Each step was a battle, his breath forming vapor clouds in the frigid air. Navigating the icy landscape was treacherous. The once familiar terrain seemed like a labyrinth, and each snowdrift and ice formation was a potential hazard. Alex relied on his survival skills, honed over years of filming in extreme environments. The sky darkened, the brief Arctic day giving way to a long, frigid night. Alex knew that stopping was not an option. If he paused, the cold would claim him. He pressed on, his mind focused on reaching his camp. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alex spotted the outline of his base camp. Relief flooded through him, giving him a final burst of energy. He staggered into the camp, collapsing near his tent. With trembling hands, he unpacked his first aid kit and began treating his wounds. The bite marks were deep, and infection was a real risk in the harsh conditions. He cleaned the wounds as best he could, applying antiseptic and bandages. The pain was relentless, but Alex knew he couldn't afford to rest. He needed to secure the camp against the cold and ensure he had enough supplies to last until help could arrive. He activated his emergency beacon, a signal that would alert the nearest rescue station to his predicament. The next few days were a blur of pain and cold. Alex rationed his food and water, careful not to overexert himself. As he waited, Alex reflected on the events that had brought him to this point. The attack had been a harsh reminder of the raw power of nature, of the thin line between observer and participant in the wild. He had always known the risks, but experiencing them firsthand was a sobering lesson. Yet despite the pain and fear, he deeply respected the alpha male seal. It had been defending its territory, following instincts honed over millennia of survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. As Alex's strength waned and hope began to dim on the fifth day, he heard the distant hum of an approaching aircraft. The sound grew louder, cutting through the wind. He staggered out of his tent, waving a brightly colored fabric to signal his location. The rescue team descended their presence, a beacon of hope in the frozen wasteland. They quickly assessed his condition, their faces a mix of concern and determination. Alex was lifted into the helicopter. The cabin's warmth starkly contrasted with the biting cold outside. He looked over the vast Arctic landscape as they flew towards the nearest medical facility. The experience had been harrowing, but he had survived. His footage would tell the story of the seals, their fierce beauty, and the challenges they faced in a changing world. In the contemporary fishing community of Kashega, Alaska, the sea remained a source of livelihood and a constant threat. The men and women who worked these waters respected the ocean's power. Still, they relied on its bounty to sustain their families. It was a life of hard work and uncertainty, where each trip could bring either fortune or disaster. The first sign of trouble came quietly, almost unnoticed. A fishing boat failed to return one evening. The Coast Guard was alerted and a search was initiated. They found the boat adrift, its crew of 4 missing. The vessel showed signs of damage, as if it had been struck by something large and powerful. The community mourned the loss, but accidents were not uncommon in these dangerous waters, so they forgot about them quickly. However, it happened again. Another boat was found wrecked, its crew of 3 missing and later found dead. The pattern became impossible to ignore as more boats were discovered and destroyed, and their crews were gone. When the number of fishermen killed was counted, it was up to 17 in just 3 months. This sent waves of fear and grief through Kashega. Theories and rumors spread like wildfire. Some blamed rogue waves, others spoke of a curse, while a few whispered about a monstrous sea creature. Desperation grew, and the local authorities and Coast Guard could not provide answers. The town needed help, someone who could decipher the mystery behind the tragedies. Enter Dr. Claire Roberts, a renowned marine biologist specializing in oceanography and sea creatures' behavior. Her arrival in Kashega was met with both hope and skepticism. Claire's reputation preceded her,